Have you ever wondered where our term stakeholders comes from? If you have a look at this and I'll try and explain. Hello, I am Mike Clayton, author of The Influence Agenda, a book for project managers and managers of change about how to systematically align stakeholders in times of change. I'd like to introduce you to the origins of our modern concept of a stakeholder. The Oxford English Dictionary credits the first use of stakeholder in the business sense that interests us to Igor Ansoff in 1965, but my research shows a slightly different story. According to the OED, the word stakeholder first appeared in 1708, meaning the holder of a wager. A stake is that which is placed at hazard, although the OED is uncertain where that usage of stake comes from. My research shows that the story of modern stakeholders starts in the late 19th century, when shareholders had the primary place in the minds of corporate owners. As late as 1931, A. Burl argued in the Harvard Law Review for the primacy of shareholders as the owners of the business. Then, a year later, E. Merrick Dodd wrote an article in the Harvard Law Review called "For Whom Are Corporate Managers Trustees?" He argued that the proper purpose of the corporation and the roles of its managers included creating secure jobs for employees, making better quality products for customers, and contributing to the welfare of the community. We can now see this as a very modern agenda in favour of stakeholders. Dodd's view was endorsed by oil executive Frank W. Abrams in a Harvard Business Review article, Management's Responsibilities in a Complex World, published in 1951. In this, he too sought to balance the interests of stockholders against those of employees, customers, and the public. With the idea of stakeholders very much in the air, a word was needed, and the term stakeholder was first coined at the Stanford Research Institute in 1963 as a play on the words shareholder and stockholder. It was shortly afterwards that Igor Ansoff briefly discussed stakeholder theory in his 1965 book, Corporate Strategy. He argued, like Dodd and Abrams, that companies had responsibilities to various stakeholders, including workers, suppliers, managers, and, of course, stockholders. Each constituency must get some satisfaction from the actions of the corporation. Stakeholder theory took off as a discipline in 1983 when R. Edward Freeman wrote Strategic Management, a Stakeholder Approach. This classic business book focused on business ethics in the widest sense. It influenced a whole field of study that has followed it. From then on, the term became widely used, especially by politicians and social planners. The political use of the term stakeholder reached its zenith in the UK when Prime Minister Tony Blair floated the concept of a stakeholder economy in a speech in January 1996, fully reversing his predecessor Margaret Thatcher's rejection of society and replacing it with the idea that all of us are stakeholders in our society. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, the word stakeholder was becoming more and more widely used. It is now that the term has started to become a part of the jargon of project management and the management of change in organisational settings. Today, in the 2010s, the concept of project stakeholders is fully mature. Indeed, I really hope we are moving away from the outmoded concept of managing stakeholders and stakeholder management towards a more respectful approach of stakeholder engagement. Project managers are increasingly realising that the success of their projects and change initiatives is intimately dependent upon stakeholders. And so we get to stakeholder rule number 1. your stakeholders will determine the success or not of your project.